Hi Katie, are you finding anything?
Yes, Bob, I found an eastern bluebird nest, and it's got 4 little chicks and an unhatched egg that should be hatched really soon.
This is Dr. Katie Sieving, professor of the Wildlife Ecology and Conservation Department at the University of Florida. Katie is an expert on all kinds of different bird species, and many of those that can help us on our whole farm approach using integrated pest management practices. I know, Katie, to bring a lot of these birds in, we have to provide them some type of habitat for them to be encouraged to move in. Describe for us a little bit of the kind of habitat that we might need to create or have on a farm to bring these birds in.
Well, birds in general need places to nest and places to feed, and they need cover. So one of the best ways that you can bring birds onto your farm is to plant a hedgerow. And a hedgerow that has woody vegetation in it, so trees and shrubs that have some structure to them can provide habitat for birds. And a number of different species will use an older hedgerow like I see you have here. It's got lots of mature trees in it and lots of shrubs with it. And then you have a younger one over here, and both of those different habitats will provide places for a high diversity of species to find habitat. Some of the ones you'll see most commonly in a hedgerow around here will be the northern cardinal and the northern mockingbird, and those 2 species by themselves can eat a whole lot of pests on a farm.
I want to go back to the bluebird house here. I know we've put up a number of bluebird houses here on the farm, and I've been amazed how quickly these bluebird houses have been occupied once we've put them up. Tell us a little bit about the bluebird.
So the bluebird is an open country bird. Unlike the mockingbird and the cardinal, they really like to have some dense vegetation around them, but the bluebird is different. They like to nest and feed in the open where they don't have a lot of vegetation near them. They'll feed out, they actually drop from a perch down onto the ground, and so a nice open area for them is the best.
I know a little earlier we were looking at another bluebird house. It had a little bit of a different design to it, and yet we had some occupants in that one as well.
Yeah, so the main similarity between that box and this one was that they're out in the open, but this is of course a wooden box that's square, has a wooden post, and that's fine as long as there's not a lot of vegetation around it. Both of those box types will work. And when we were over there looking at that other box, we had 5 really big chicks in that nest. And at that age, chicks like that can be fed hundreds of insects per day. And the insects that the adults are bringing to the nest include caterpillars primarily and grasshoppers as well. And they'll eat hundreds per day.
And so that adds up pretty quickly. We've got at least a dozen of these bluebird houses here on the property. And so once we get all of those occupied, that's a lot of insects that would be taken out of our production area, hopefully. Are there some other species that we would also utilize the boxes for in encouraging them on the farm? Yeah, there are some species like chickadees and tufted titmice. They'll use a box, as well as there's another one that really likes open areas like the bluebird, and that's the great crested flycatcher. And you can see these 2 boxes are a little bit different in size, and the holes are different sizes, and different species that you're trying to attract with different boxes, you should look up the dimensions to make sure you get the right size box, and that includes the hole and the size of the box itself. Interesting. So a lot of different species, each one of those having something specific to attract them and encourage them to take residence here on the farm. And I know that you also have an additional feature here on the farm, the brush piles, that are also encouraging some other species of birds to become resident here on the properties. So Katie, this is our final feature here where we have some benefit to birds. Tell us a little bit about this particular feature. Okay, well, Bob, this is a brush pile, and it's very useful for a number of birds for different purposes. Many of the birds we've already talked about, the smaller birds, can perch on the structure here and be looking for the prey that they're interested in feeding on. And there's one bird in particular that will sometimes nest in a box, like we've talked about. The Carolina wren is a species, though, that really likes a dark, deep brush pile like this for cover, especially after their chicks hatch and the babies are still young and hanging around with the parents. This is a nice, safe place for them to stash the family while they look for food and conduct their business. So Katie, are there other species that could utilize brush pile? Yes, there are a number of other species, namely reptiles, that really enjoy this structure as well for cover and also for thermoregulation purposes. They can be in the shade when it's too hot, and they can be in the sun when it's
when it's too cold and they want to warm up. And some of the species that you might be interested in are things like snakes, black racers and rat snakes that eat a lot of pests, can spend a lot of time in there hiding until it's time to go look for food.
So some of the non-poisonous snakes in that situation would be important in our overall plan here. I noticed that the construction of this particular brush pile has the larger logs at the bottom, and I assume that there's some important directions when constructing a brush pile that would be beneficial.
Yeah, you'd like to maximize access to the brush pile, and for the reptiles in particular, and also for some of the smaller birds that are ground feeders and so forth, access in the bottom is quite important. So some spaces on the bottom and then heavy cover on the top so that the predators that might be looking to eat them wouldn't be able to get into the structure so easily.
Very interesting. You know, you've brought a wide variety of things into our overall farm here with our integrated pest management approach that I would have never thought of previously. So I want to thank you for bringing those things in and helping to increase the overall biodiversity here on our farm. Thank you very much, Katie.
You're welcome. Thanks.